Friday, 11:11 p.m. Got myself sent to Uberwald on a diplomatic mission for the coronation of the Low King. Only one problem. The scone of stone's been stolen. Could have been any number of people. Already had my interview with the dwarves, and then the vampires. All that's left is the lycanthropes. All I need to do is find out where those wolves are. Yeah! Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I will be reviewing Boosh, the Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett. This is book 5 of the City Watch books, which is a sub-series of the Discworld novels. The Fifth Elephant it's really different in a lot of ways than the first 4 of the Guards books. Jingo is different really than the first 3, but this one's different in a different way. So Commander Vimes, Duke Vimes, has been sent to Uberwald as Ankh-Morpork's official diplomatic representative because the Low King, which is the king of these dwarves. There's these two kinds of dwarves. There's like the dwarves that come to Ankh-Morpork, and then there's the dwarves that are like super conservative, that like cover like all of their bodies except like their eyes, and don't think anything in the city is like modern. It's very like, I don't know, very, Amish, or they just don't believe in like society. They believe in complete seclusion, like underground. And so there's two factions fighting over who should be the Low King. Is it a friend to Ankh-Morpork, or is it one of the the conservative dwarves that hate them? And so Vimes is sent to kind of interfere in Uberwaldian politics on behalf of Ankh-Morpork. And as Duke, that's what he's going to do. He's going to make sure that this kind of new regime in Uberwald has like favorable treaties with Ankh-Morpork. So it's very political heavy. This is probably the most politically intrigued, the most politically charged of the Discworld novels up to this point. And in addition, it is also the least funny one up to this point. This is very, very much a mystery novel, and more of a thriller, really, than the first 4. The first 4, there was a mystery, but that mystery seems secondary to kind of the humor and like the social commentary, and there's less of this. There's less of the social commentary in The Fifth Elephant. There is some, but there's less, and it's much more about the plot and the narrative, and the mystery and kind of the thrills and action sequences. And so it feels very different. I still liked it. Like, I definitely liked this book better than I did the last time I read it. It's definitely bottom of A tier for me, because it's a watch book and it's great. And what I appreciate in the book this time around that I didn't last time is just the really great character work that goes on in here. This book, while on its own, not this not hilarious, or this great like sparkling microscope shining a light on these social issues, but taken as a larger whole, like what it means to the rest of the Discworld is actually pretty important politically, and as far as like character growth wise. And so obviously the plot is going to revolve around things that go wrong at the coronation of the Low King, some things that are linked to what is happening in Ankh-Morpork. And this is the first watch book that doesn't somehow deal with the deposition of Lord Vetinari. Like, finally, there's not someone trying to remove the patrician. And, I kind of miss it, because also at the end, there's not really a patrician debrief where they discuss all the things that happened and the attempts to dethrone him like we usually have. And I kind of missed that when that wasn't there. But there is a lot of good to say about this book. First of all, we learn more about Vimes and what kind of man Vimes is. Vimes is the main character, really, of the first 4. And in the last one, we saw that even though he's a duke, he is all about the chase. He is a policeman. He will arrest whoever he wants to. Like, he doesn't care what your rank is. He is going to arrest you. But here, we get to see Vimes through, like, some of the other characters' eyes. And even before that, we see Vimes' resilience, and we do get to see in this book, more than any other book so far, how much Vimes cares about his wife. And that's one of the really good things about this book, is the further development of the relationship between Sybil and Vimes, because Sybil accompanies him on this diplomatic mission. And first of all, Vimes is terrible. Vetinari sends him because Vimes is terrible. Vimes just, he's the bull in the china shop. He doesn't make deals. He doesn't like connive. He doesn't horse trade. He's just like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. And okay, no, like, that's corrupt. No, I'll arrest you. Like, get out of my face. I'm from Ankh-Morpork. What do you mean I can't arrest you here. I will absolutely arrest you here. Like, Vimes just, he doesn't have time to, like, tiptoe and, like, walk on eggshells around people. He is a terrible diplomat. But Sybil is such an amazing diplomat. She's from one of the oldest families in Ankh-Morpork. She is, she was born and raised to this, even though she does like raising dragons, which isn't really a kind of noble thing to do. She still grew up in a boarding school and trained to, like, you know, hobnob with the other noble houses, and so she is just able to, like, to step in and help Vimes when she needs to. And we also learn from this, like, because there are people from Sybil's past. One of the Uberwaldian nobility went to finishing school with Sybil, and, you know, we learn that Sybil is the kind of woman who writes, like, every year, writes, like, you know, checkup cards to be like, oh, how are you? This is what's going on in my life. I hope you're doing well. Like, even if she didn't like the people in school, she does it because that's what you're supposed to do, because it's what was done. Sybil is very traditional. She didn't even like the girl, but she writes letters to her anyway. And so we learn, like, a lot about Sybil's insecurities, about how big she was. She was always like a huge woman. Like, she was big as a child too, as a girl in the finishing school, and her insecurities make her even that much more human, because she is this really strong, incredible presence that just plays perfectly off of Vimes, and together they work so well together and independently of one another. Just really a power couple in fantasy. It's just so good. I want to read you this this passage about, like, very beginning of the book, of the way that Sybil feels about Vimes, because this is Vimes through Sybil's eyes. She never really knew what it was he did. Oh, she knew what his job was, but by all accounts, he didn't spend much time behind his desk. He tended to drop his clothes into the laundry basket before he eventually came to bed, so she'd only hear later from the laundry girl about the bloodstains in the mud. There were rumors of chases over rooftops, hand-to-hand and knee-to-groin fights with men who had names like Harry the Bolt Cutter Weems. There was a Sam Vimes she knew who went out and came home again, and then there was another Sam Vimes who hardly belonged to her and lived in the same world as all those men with the dreadful names. And I just really liked this depiction of Vimes from Sybil. She knows that she can't hold him too tight. He has to be a policeman. He has to have the chase. He has to run down the bad guy. Like, he's not meant for paperwork. He's meant for detectoring. And she allows him to do that. Like, that's her Vimes too. But she can take comfort in the fact that there is the Vimes that loves her and comes home, and she doesn't really have to ask all these questions that are going to make her worried. She just knows that Vimes, whatever he does, he's going to come home despite all the danger he puts himself in. Would she prefer he not do that? Yes, for his safety, but not for his happiness. She knows that Vimes is happiest when he's freaking chasing a bad guy. And also, like, right after that, something I really identify with is that Vimes looks at the world as able to be solved. He looks at the world like just a large crime that can be solved if only he chases the right guy, catches the right bad guy, finds the right clues, though not too many, because that can lead you astray, as he is also fond of saying. And so their relationship, while they're on this, you know, she went because they thought it could be like a, you know, like a romantic getaway while he's diplomating. It is not that at all, but we do get to see those deep feelings between Sybil and Vimes, and also between Sybil and some of the other watchmen that go. Like, Sybil is just such a caring individual, and that's where her strength lies. As K. Fox said in the Watch trailer, how in the show The Watch, they shrunk Sybil down. Like, they made her not a big woman, and they made her like a fighter. And that's not who she is. Her power is in her kindness and compassion and her mercy. She does not believe that strength, like, and power is how you rule. That's just not Sybil. And so, it's just a travesty. Also, concerning the characters, we get a much greater picture of the relationship between Angua and Carrot, and that whole werewolf-human thing that's just been brewing for the whole time. We get to see a lot more close up to this. We get to learn more intimate things about them. Like, their relationship is really here, one of the things in the forefront, and it's just so real and human. All of these characters, despite being kind of these fantastic, kind of, wacky, like in a lot of ways, and a lot of things they do are absurd and ridiculous. But the reason that they're so beloved is that Pratchett brings this humanity to all of them, despite these fantastical situations. I feel this way about the Senlin books, is these are real people in extraordinary circumstances. Despite these fantastical circumstances, their problems are human problems. The relationship issues and the job issues that Vimes and Sybil have are things that we have. The relationship problems between Carrot and Angua are the same kinds of problems that we have. Pratchett is just brilliant in the way that he writes characters, and this is the best character work we've had so far. And so in this book, we learn a ton more about the dwarven lore and werewolf lore. We learn a lot about, not quite as much about the vampires. I think Carpe Jugulum. It's because Carpe Jugulum, the Granny Weatherwax book, the witch book, gives us that massive insight to vampire culture. So we don't quite get that here. We get a little bit, but most of it is about the dwarves and about the werewolves. And we learn about the immigration to the big cities. So it's like city dwarf versus country dwarf, and about how, you know, the one faction of the low dwarves that cover themselves, they just don't believe in going to the cities because it just corrupts all things dwarven. But just like we have in modern day cities, where a certain type of nationality immigrates to a large city, and there becomes like a section of the city that is devoted to them, or primarily that they primarily reside in there. So the dwarves set up, like, you know, mini dwarf towns within Ankh-Morpork. There's a dwarven section of Ankh-Morpork that has dwarven bars and dwarven restaurants, and that's where the dwarves kind of hang out. And tensions are rising because there's brawls between these two factions of dwarves. And as we see Vimes deal with these guys, Vimes is so... I love Vimes because Vimes is not perfect. Vimes has prejudices that he was just born with and that he has culturally. But Vimes is a man who does want to grow and is willing to, you know, kind of accept new information, that that he was ignorant and that he is not always right. And one of the things that he has to face is that he always considers people who are anti-Ankh-Morpork as villains. So as he's trying to, you know, diplomatize anyone who has an anti-Ankh-Morpork stance, he just views as the bad guys. Like, oh, those are the bad dwarves, right? And they have to be like, you know, Sir Vimes, just because someone is anti-Ankh-Morpork doesn't make them the bad guy. Like, you can disagree with your city and your country and still be a decent human being that's looking out for, you know, Uberwald. They're just trying to keep Uberwald conservative versus, you know, being pushed into the kind of the modern era. And so I like that Vimes, when faced with this information, you know, Vimes is like, oh, you're right. I'm kind of a butt when it comes to stuff like that. And because one of the main conflicts of this, and the reason that Uberwald kind of rejects Ankh-Morpork's presence, is that it doesn't want to be a vassal state of Ankh-Morpork. And so there's this constant debate versus civilized and wild and untamed. In fact, there's an antagonist who constantly refers to Vimes as civilized. How are you doing there, civilized? Like, even though every time Vimes is in danger, he calls him civilized, because as like a dig that Vimes is here, and by extension, Ankh-Morpork is here to tame the wilds of Uberwald. It's kind of collection of unincorporated city-states that haven't really moved into the modern era, that are really kind of stuck in that kind of Transylvanian, you know, monster movie aesthetic. And at no point does Vimes or any of the Ankh-Morporkians believe that they're not doing the right thing, that it's not the right thing to do to want to integrate into the modern era along with Ankh-Morpork, to become civilized. And so Pratchett here is really kind of asking, like, who are we to decide what is civilized and what is uncivilized, as Vimes and co. kind of have to learn. And that is kind of illustrated here, not just between the antagonist and Vimes, but also between what they call the law versus the lore. So Ankh-Morpork and Vimes and the Watch, they are about the law and following the law. But very often, and it's just so clever on Pratchett's part, in Uberwald, you're not breaking the law, you're breaking the lore. They say that's against the lore. So Uberwald is this very traditional, conservative area that you do things because that's the way you've always done it. Like this is who we are. Like moving into the modern era is not an option because we have the lore surrounding vampires and dwarves and werewolves, and that's what you follow. You fear these people because that's the lore of these people. You do this because that's the lore that's been passed down, and it deals a lot with that. What does it mean to pass this lore down, to pass down this information and these traditions? What does that mean for everybody? And is it purely symbolic, or does it actually have some kind of physical representation? And I just think that's so cool, where it's law and order and civilization versus lore and wildness and this untamed like frontier area. And so while Uberwald is talking about, you know, wanting to remain free from Ankh-Morpork, there's another discussion about what is freedom. Sometimes freedom is the ability to choose not to do something. Freedom is not just your ability, I can do what I want. It's also, I can choose not to do those things, which I also thought was really interesting. Another thing we see in Uberwald is kind of this dark and like grim place. We see that come out in a lot of our characters. We see kind of this dark side, this nastier side, this more untamed, uncivilized side. We see it even in Carrot. We see that even our boy Carrot has a nasty side, and that's just like, whoa. Now, Carrot's nasty is so much different than like Vime's nastiness or Sybil's nastiness or even Angwa's nastiness. It's just so cool as we see this darker side of these characters. And so the last kind of theme that I want to talk about before I get into just kind of the things I liked about it is the fifth elephant, the name of this book. So the fifth elephant is a legend that Uberwald has about, there was originally a fifth elephant standing, because Discworld is a flat disc on the back of four elephants on the back of a giant space turtle, the great Atuin, and it flies through space. Well, legend has it there was originally a fifth turtle, and it slipped and fell, and it like did an orbit, and eventually like a meteor crash landed in Uberwald and was buried. And so like its bones and like Uberwald is rich in natural resources. So we've got that. There's a reason that Ankh-Morpork wants favorable nation status in Uberwald because of that rich natural resource. In fact, one of their main sources is the fat mines, and because all the fat from the fifth elephant, they mine that and turn it into these, you know, the wax and stuff they get from it. Like they get the best tallow candles from the elephant fat. And so that's the legend. But what the fifth elephant really is, what it tells you early on, the fifth elephant, though it is an Uberwaldian myth, it also means something that, while unseen, is really secretly controlling events. And so that's a theme that runs through the entire book as well. And so when all is revealed and everything's kind of worked out, it's just really cool how this myth and this other symbolism of the fifth elephant runs throughout the whole story. Some other things I really like we get to see Leonard de Quirm again. I feel so bad for Leonard. Like, Leonard has all these inventions, and everyone just wants to go to war with them. Like, everyone just wants to use them for like total destruction. And I just feel so bad because he doesn't want that. He wants to help humanity. And everyone's like, oh, I can totally weaponize that. And it just makes him sad. Here we see a lot about the traffic brigade. Remember, Colin was promoted to in charge of traffic in the last book. And so we see him like writing tickets, and like they boot carts and stuff, and Colin just takes to it. He writes tickets unless, you know, you feed him, in which case he's like, oh, well, I didn't see your cart there. And we also see the Clax towers, which are really kind of confusing. The semaphore towers, where it's just like paddles that send messages like from tower to tower to tower, they didn't start in Fifth Elephant. They're in one of the other books that they originate in. I forget which book they originate in. If you remember, please let me know, though I've probably wikied it. Like, I'm probably gonna look it up as soon as I get off of this, but let me know if you already know. And so the Clax towers actually play an important role, because that's how you get messages from Ankh-Morpork all across the world. You pay and you send like these, it's like a telegram service, really. And so we do get to see a lot more about that, a lot more about the world opening up, because we've really just seen Ankh-Morpork and then Clatch in these Guards books. And now we get to see Uberwald and kind of a bigger picture of the world at large. Colin's malapropisms are in freaking full form. He hears someone say mystery wrapped in an enigma, and later he's like, it's a mystery wrapped in an enema. And it's just like, that's not what it is. That's not what it is, Colin. And he hears someone talking like someone whispering, and instead of saying how do we say it in Italian? Sotto voce, instead of I would say sotto voce if I was doing Latin. So sotto voce, which is like under your breath. He's like, who's saying that blotto voice? And that's the kind of stuff you would miss. Like, if you don't know sotto voce, you don't realize that you're like, what is blotto voice? You don't realize he's being a moron. They also reach an impasse. They reach an impasse. And instead he's like, oh, looks like we got ourselves an imp arse. And it's like, it's not an imp arse, it's an impasse. His malapropisms are amazing. I love Colin when he's being... And Colin is in rare form. Like, his mind shuts off, and you'll see the situation. He's just like, Vimes is gonna go spare, and Vimes is gonna go spare.
Hi guys, Editing Alan here. I must have crossed out the note when I was filming, because I crossed out my notes as I say things. I forgot to talk about the Igors. So the Igors are not introduced in Fifth Elephant, but they are everywhere in the Fifth Elephant. And the Igors, and this is how we transition to having Igors and Ankh-Morpork, and the Igors are exactly what you think they are. They are born and / made henchmen. That's what they do. It is their lives to be henchmen, and when one of them dies, they harvest the parts of that Igor and attach it to another Igor. In fact, it's like a great badge of honor to like figure out like how far back your parts go in the Igors. Like, there's all, and like, it's, you know, they have to, if you're an Igor, like, you have to, like, you know, walk with a shuffle, like, yeah, master, and you gotta talk with a lisp, and yeah, master, yes, master. And so the Igors are everywhere, and they're amazing, and I would be remiss if I had forgotten to put the Igors in this video.
And also, what is super, like, I don't know, super literaturic, is there's one section with, like, that is just this huge homage to Chekhov. We see, like, references in this one big section. There's references to Chekhov's plays, Uncle Vanya, The Cherry Orchard, The Three Sisters. Just add a clip, and if you don't know those plays, it's super confusing. And if you're not, like, acquainted with Chekhov and his plays, it's just a really bizarre couple of scenes where these three old women keep talking about they don't want to sell their house, and, you know, cutting down the cherry orchard, and their Uncle Vanya, and it's just really bizarre. But this is what I love about Pratchett, is when I read this the first time, I did not know any Chekhov plays. I read this when it came out. I think that's the last, I may have read it since then, maybe a couple years later, 2002, maybe the last time I read this. I didn't know Chekhov plays. I thought those were boring then. Now I'm a much more well-rounded individual, and so I am familiar with Chekhov's plays, so I can find that thing, and that's just the brilliant thing about Pratchett, is every time you can just get something new from it. And so I really enjoyed this book. It reads much more like a mystery than kind of the other ones. And I love me a fast-paced mystery thriller page-turner. It's just so good. Like, on the Kingfin approval system, I'll give this one a superb minus. I'll give it a superb minus. It's just good. Like, it's so good. Like, the Guards books are so good. I don't know how I can give one below a superb. 5 out of 5 stars. Out of 5 stars, 5 stars. I like this book. It's so good. Like, it's really different than the first 4, and it's just super, super fast read. And again, all of that growth about the characters, it's just so incredible. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, information about my Discord and Patreon is down in the description, and as always, I will see you next time. Only one problem. The Scone of Stone's been stolen. Could have been any number of people. Already had my meeting with the, already had my meeting, like, oh my gosh, like, you scheduled it. Excuse me, could you pencil me in around noon? We'll have crumpets. No.